Hi, I'm Dave Jackson. Welcome to another JPR Live Session made possible with support from the Falls Tap House in Klamath Falls. Joining me in the JPR Steve Nelson Performance Studio is a singer-songwriter from Seattle, Ian Jones. His new album, Results Not Typical, is out April 7th. His music's been described as Pacific Northwest country. The new album's being compared to mid-career Tom Petty meets 70s outlaw country and James Taylor-esque folk. We've been sharing tunes on it recently on Open Air. Hope you've had a chance to hear them. Ian Jones, welcome to JPR. It's a pleasure to meet you.
Thanks for having me, Dave.
Appreciate
it.
So let's start with just telling us about growing up and your introduction to music.
So I grew up in, I live in Seattle now, but I grew up in a town called Parkland, which is in the south end of Tacoma, which anyone from there would say that's the wrong end of town.
Okay.
The bad part. And since I was growing up there in the 70s, it hasn't gotten much better. That's being polite. So I like to say in the shadow of Mount Rainier, which is true. So when I was a kid, my dad was a professor at a local college. He took off early. I was about 5. Him and my mom split up. And my mom, with her superhero cape, raised 3 kids on her own. And then we would go stay with my dad. You know, he lived up in the woods, and so my dad was the country music guy and the classical music guy, and then my mom was the hippie. They were both artists. My mom was a painter and a soft sculpturist, and we would do. We had a record player, and that was my babysitter. And so one of the things is that my musical library was only as wide as the records that we had. So there was a lot of stuff that I didn't know about because we didn't have it. But we had all the Beatles, James Taylor, Jim Croce, Dylan, Judy Collins, Joni Mitchell. Only as I got a little older and I was able to branch out with some friends, my best friend, Mark Eager, down the street, he had an older brother, and they introduced me to David Bowie, the Rolling Stones, Led Zeppelin, and then his older brother was instrumental in introducing me to the Ramones and Richard Hell and the Sex Pistols and things like that, the punk from the New York scene in the late 70s. So I had quite a wide variety of music, but basically at home I was enthralled with the record player. And I listened to a lot of, and we also had, Billy Joel and Elton John. And so I taught myself how to play piano by listening to the Beatles and Billy Joel and Elton John. And then from then on, I moved to guitar after some friends taught me a couple chords, and just self-taught from there.
Yeah, you mentioned piano. You released something called Piano Songs back in...
So in 2009, 2010, my dad was going through a battle with cancer, which... I don't like to say anyone loses a battle with cancer. They fight it, and then, the world moves on. And so I lost my dad in 2010. Subsequently, the same day my son was born, 3 hours apart, which is something I haven't even tapped into yet. It's been buried in my subconscious forever. But during that time, I wanted to make a new record. I had decided, coming back from my California days, I came back up here to have a family, and I was going to take 2 or 3 years off. This is me doing my air quotes. It's like playing card tricks on the radio because you can't see what I'm doing, but I'm making air quotes with my fingers. My 2 to 3 years off turned into like 12 or 13 off because stuff happened. People get sick. I had to take care of my dad, etc. And I decided that I was going to go back into music, and I needed something to do. And as a solo artist this time, I had been in bands for 30 years. And so as a solo artist, I hired a producer, and I was going to make like an Americana record. And the producer said, I sat down at the piano, and he said, hey, I know you want to make this record over here, but this piano stuff's really cool. Let's just do this. So we made a record called Piano Songs Volume 1, which was about 20 years worth of piano songs. And it was my first introduction to working with a real producer, someone who I turned over creative control of my art to. And he said, all you get to do is play piano and sing. You don't get to do anything else except sit there and shut up and watch me
do what
work.
You're supposed to do, right?
which I did, and it worked out great. Based on what my budget was and all the stuff that I was going through life-wise, it turned out remarkable.
Yeah, I heard some of the songs.
It's still not. It's not going to win any awards, but it's a cool record, and there's some very cool songs on it. So.
Well, we should have brought the piano out for you to play, but you're sitting here.
Next time through, I'll play. I've got some new ones on piano that I'm working on, which would be pretty cool.
Well, you're here with your guitar today. How about playing us a song? What do you want to start with today?
Well, let's start with the single that they asked me initially. When I say they, I have a team. I have a publicist and I have a couple radio promoters. Jordan Zucker is the one who put this together. Mm-hmm. And they said, hey, what do you want to use as a single? And my response immediately was, don't ask me. What do I know? I just write the songs. You guys are the pros. You pick the one you like best. So they selected this song. This is called Lost Highway. And on the record, it has a horn section, which I wasn't able to bring with me today. Right. So I'm going to play it the way that it was kind of originally written. Little harmonica and stuff. So
bare bones sounds good to us.
All right, well, let's do this. Here we go. Well, I got a ticket and I'm telling you, Jack, it's been a while and I want to go back. But I can't get myself off that lost highway. It's like I'm stranded in a broken down station, hard to travel with no destination. And I've been driving since the break of day. Well, I saw the wheat fields with sun shining on it, and I've been high on a vodka and a tonic, and I wanted you to grow up so I could live in your shade. But there's so many times I have fallen, I guess I might have missed my true calling as I try to get found on that lost highway. Yeah, so let it go. Let the stars come out after the rain, yeah, and let it go. 'Cause gray skies will be blue again, let it go. Let the clouds blow away with the wind, and if the sun comes out tomorrow, then let her in. Sometimes the trees get so thick here upon us, you think that we'd be blind and miss that forest. Yeah, well, you might just think that we were blind anyway. Might be wrong, hell, it really don't matter. If you were listening, you'd hear my heart shatter as I pick myself up off that lost highway. Yeah, and let it go. Let the stars come out after the rain, yeah, and let it go. 'Cause gray skies will be blue again, so let it go. Let the clouds blow away with the wind. And if the sun comes around tomorrow, then let her in. If the sun comes around tomorrow, then let her in. Catch the sun creeping around tomorrow, then let her in.
That's Ian Jones with Lost Highway in a JPR Live session. That song is from his upcoming release, Results Not Typical. You can find music and information about Ian Jones at ianjonesmusic.com. So tell us about Lost Highway. There's a story in there somewhere. I'm hearing it's about a road, except I can't get myself off of this Lost Highway.
So first of all, there's a bunch of songs called Lost Highway.
Oh, sure.
The name goes on forever. Will Rogers, Willie Nelson. I think Buck Owens probably has one. Mm-hmm. Anyway, the truth of the story, if we should be completely frank, is there was also a record label called Lost Highway.
Right.
And at one point in time, Willie Nelson was on it and Ryan Adams was on it. And I really just wanted to get on that Lost Highway. So that's where it started. But then as the song developed, I realized that, the Lost Highway, I try to be vague when I write songs. I try to not write songs where I sing, I woke up and I brushed my teeth and then I put on my socks, because that doesn't leave anything to the imagination. Mm-hmm. And I want to be able to write things that people can hear and say, yeah, man, that I can see how that applies to my life. Or, yeah, I went through that, even though they may not even know what I'm talking about. If they can grasp it, and that's the beauty of art, whether it's a painting or it's a passage in a book or it's a song, to have the receiver of that art say, yeah, that hits home, that I get that. So once I really dug into it, I was like, Lost Highway could literally be a physical road.
Right.
It also could be, I tend to try to picture myself sitting there watching a slideshow of my childhood. It's the nostalgia of looking back at something you can't get back and remembering the times, the house I used to live in when we were young. No, I mean, I feel young, but
right.
But so it could go down a lot of different roads, and so that's kind of what I wanted to do. And then and then there's kind of a recurring theme in a lot of my music where, the sun's gonna come out tomorrow,
right?
Regardless of the nostalgia, how we feel, the age, whatever's happening, something might happen that's a total drag, but tomorrow the sun's gonna get up, right. And we're gonna get up. And life's going to carry on. And you put stuff behind you. When I lost my dad, I was a wreck. Right. I was destroyed. I loved him to death. And I'd give anything to get him back just for a day.
Right.
But I can't. So I wake up and I move on. And then I do things to try to honor him and honor his legacy, taking music seriously and honoring the trade and the craft, taking it seriously, I mean, it's a big deal. And when you look at it that way, I mean, I went and I played this morning over at the coffee shop, and I just felt great because I'm doing what I love and I'm being serious about it. And I'm, so the Lost Highway is kind of that. That's kind of what Lost Highway is about. At the end of the day, it's about nostalgia and things that are behind us, but we can look at and at least think about them and feel good.
Another tune that kind of struck me is the tune "Someday." Is that about something in particular or somebody in particular?
Yeah. So, growing up in Parkland, one of the things, and I on my way down here, I stopped in Portland and I saw a dear friend of mine who was from Parkland as well, and he's an attorney for a big company up there in Lake Oswego, actually. And we always joke about escaping from Parkland. We escaped. We made it out alive, And the thing about Parkland was that a lot of my friends that were there growing up, some of them went to college, and some of them had to move because their family was military, because that's a military town. But a lot of people, what they did is they went into law enforcement. They were either cops or they were firefighters or they were paramedics. And I've takes more than two hands to count the guys just from my graduating class that are cops, fire, or some sort of law enforcement, first responders. And so my friend Ronnie Owens was a cop, and he was I think he was Tacoma Police to start. Then he was Washington State Patrol, and then he went over and he was when Lakewood, which is became a city, which was it happened at some point in the the 90s. He joined the Lakewood Police Department. And about 11 or 12 years ago, it was after Thanksgiving, because I remember I was out getting my Christmas tree with my family, and my phone rang, and it was my old neighbor who also, had moved on, but she was from Parkland, and she has weird feelers out. She said, 4 police officers just got shot in a coffee shop in Parkland. And that's all she said. And I immediately knew that I knew one of them. And I just had this really bad gut feeling. And gut feelings are weird because they're usually right. You got to trust your gut. That's not just a saying, it's true. So I called my best friend Dave up. And I said, Dave, hey man, I just heard this news. Can you look into it? I'm busy with the family. He called me back in 5 minutes. He said, it was Ronnie.
Yeah.
So I was just gutted. And I went home and I sat in my studio. And apparently it was some guy that was out on 3 strikes, you're out. And he told his friends, I'm not going back to jail. Watch this. Going out in a blaze of glory. Well, he walked into a coffee shop and lit up 4 cops. And then got away. It took him a couple weeks to find the guy. And anyway, I wrote this song. I wrote the song for Ronnie. And then I recorded it initially. And I was trying to, and I didn't know what I was doing as far as, DSPs and putting stuff out there. And I had no concept. And I totally couldn't have flubbed it up any worse. And my goal was to, hey, we're going to release this song and any proceeds we get from it, we'll give to the families. Right. Well, I screwed it up. It didn't come out when I said it was going to come out. I got on the radio and we did all the stuff about it. They played the song. The Rick Fisher, who is a great mastering engineer, worked with Steve Miller for 25 years. He mastered it for free. The recording was not free. So I figured once I got my recording costs back, every penny would go to the family. I mean, I knew his family. I knew his sisters and his family. He had a kid. Anyway, and then this guy from Nashville who was from the Northwest decided he was going to write a song about it and, of course, not donate anything. And mine got bumped. Yeah. And so it just sat there, and then I remember we were in Ohio getting ready to make this record, and I was going through some songs, and it popped into my head, and I started playing it, and Jesse was like, hey, what's that? So I played it for him, and I explained it. He goes, oh, that goes on the record.
Right. Well, yeah, I was just screening the record recently, and that song stuck out. It's like, wow, that meant something to you when you wrote it.
Well, the first version of it, you can hear, because I say in the song, and as angry as I am, I can't stop thinking about them.
Right.
The 4 officers.
Right.
But the last chorus is, as angry as I am, I can't stop thinking about my friend.
Right.
And on the original version of it, I was in tears when I sang, and you could hear it.
Yeah.
But on this one, there's still a lot of emotion, and I think it's for me, it's for Ronnie, but really it's for anyone who has lost someone in the line of duty or in a war.
Right. There's been
because at the end it's like someday we'll all be together again.
Right.
And
it's timely considering the last 20 years of pretty constant war and all kinds of shootings.
Just constant.
Right, yeah. So.
Right, it's not getting any better.
No,
it's
unfortunate.
That's what that song is about.
Wow. So moving on to something a little different. 'Cause that's
a little
pretty
lighter.
Heavy subject. Yeah. You have a pretty strong work and practice ethic, and a few minutes ago you mentioned you're just getting up and doing something you like and putting your soul into the music. Where does that come from?
Well, back in the 90s when I was playing and touring, it all was from a different place. And so my dad was an English professor, and he studied one of his professors in grad school was Robert Frost. I mean, wow. That's pretty heavy for a teacher, right? And my dad was a poet. He had some published books, and he did poetry readings, and he was very serious about his craft. I always joke and say that if the cancer wouldn't have killed him, the present day's generation of butchering the English language would have. All the abbreviations and things.
Right.
Anyway, while he was dying, I got to spend a lot of time with him. And I think what he had planned on doing was saving every penny. And then when he retired, he was going to go and with his wife and sail off into the sunset and travel and do stuff. Well, she died 5 years before him. Yeah. And then when he got sick, he was obviously angry, but he was spiritual, but he wasn't religious. And he knew what I was doing with music. And he sat me down and he said, you know what? There's no do-overs. You get one shot on this rock. So if you want to do something, do it now. Don't wait, because you never know when you're going to have another shot. And then he went on to say, but if you're going to do it, And he knew what he was talking. We both understood that he was talking to me about me pursuing music. He goes, if you're going to do it, respect it. Respect the craft. Respect the trade. Don't waste people's time. Don't be wasted. You know, I quit drinking because going into this as seriously as I'm taking it, and I'm treating it like a business now, because, you know, they don't say music business because it sounds cool. It's a business. And I should get my head checked because it's the most ridiculous business on the planet, the entertainment industry. Hunter S. Thompson had a saying about it. If you don't know it, look it up, because it's exactly spot on.
It's probably one we can't say on the radio.
Yeah, well, yeah, it's Hunter S. Thompson, so there you go. Google Hunter S. Thompson's quote on the entertainment industry or the music industry.
Okay.
He said, take it seriously. And it took me a while to really, and couple that with what Jim Messina said. Jim Messina, who I became friends with, he said, it doesn't matter how good you are. It's about being in the right place at the right time. Then he went on to say, but you have to be ready to be in the right place at the right time. So be prepared. Warm your voice up. Don't be hammered. Recurring theme in taking things seriously. Don't be hammered. And respect it. But more importantly, you have to be prepared to never be in the right place at the right time. And that's the best advice I've ever got from the music industry.
That really makes sense, because you got to be doing what you love, and if the right moment comes along, that's great. But
if you're doing it to become famous and rich, you're going to be gravely disappointed 99.999% of the time. You know, if you're one of those guys that gets discovered and it changes your life, that's, you know, good for you and congratulations. And and don't mess it up, because as fast as someone can give it to you, they can take it away from you.
Exactly.
But, you know, it's so between that and what my dad said, it took me a while to really figure it out. And then I said, you know, if I'm going to do this, and when he passed away, he left me a little bit of money. And I said to myself, I don't want to be on my deathbed and think to myself, what if I just would have made a record with a real producer with the best musicians in the world? And that's what this record is. Now, I'm dear friends with Jesse, but I've never worked with him on this side of the profession. We've always just performed and played together and done festivals and things and hung out afterwards around a fire, passing a guitar around, doing Beatles songs. This is working with him in a professional capacity where I say, here is my art, you're in charge. You do what you find is best. You be the producer. You put the right guys in the room, which he did.
Right.
And
yeah, you had a pretty good cast of folks on this album. They have a nice.
There's another story
pedigree
in that altogether about me purposely not researching who they were and what they did. But unfortunately, I asked a stupid question halfway through the session and found out. And I had to try to not wet my pants for the rest of the session.
Well, let's hear another tune.
All right.
What do you want to play?
Let's do... So here's one. This is a song called Athens Smiles. And this is a funny song because I love Athens, Georgia. And I was able to tour. The band I was in when I was in Santa Barbara, it was a band called FM 1960, which is a street in Houston, Texas. Farm to Market Road, 1960. And it was with these two guys from Houston. So we put this band out. We ended up making a record. What did Brian say? What's the worst that can happen? We could make a record and go on tour. So we made a record, and our first tour was 2.5 months, like a U.S. tour, which was great.
Right.
We were based in Athens, Georgia, for like 3 weeks, and we just traveled because we had a free place to stay. So we would come back, and on our nights off, we would just wander around the streets of Athens, which is a remarkable town.
A hotbed of music, especially in the 80s and the 90s.
And the cool thing is, on the side note, is that there's no corporate interests in Athens. So if you want to get to a Walmart or a McDonald's, you got to drive to the city limits. So it's all mom and pop stuff. And then you have University of Georgia. So it's weird. Anyway, so fast forward, I'm back in Seattle, and we're doing a show with this girl from Athens, Georgia. So I reached out to her, and I never heard back because that was like MySpace days, right? So I'm dating myself here. And I never heard back, and they show up for the show. And the show was a disaster. Our set was like 10 minutes long because she wouldn't get off stage.
Oh.
They said one more song, and she went into a medley. Her tour was Athens, Georgia, Seattle, San Diego, and then back to Athens. And I'm like, wow, that's a lot of driving for 4 shows that probably don't pay. Right. So that was that. And then 2 nights later, I went down and I saw Merle Haggard and Nico Case at the Paramount Theater in Seattle. And I love Nico Case. She's a local Northwestern gal. And but I'd never seen Merle Haggard before. He gets up on stage. He had Donald Duck Dunn playing bass for him. Just an all-star cast.
He could get anybody to play with him, I'm sure, at some point in his
exactly.
career. Yeah.
But there's like 12 guys on stage, and it sounded like a 4-piece because everyone was playing so little. And up to that point, I was kind of one of those guys that would play, and I call it chainsawing my way through, where you strum, and you're singing, and you're trying to have the guitar be the drums, the bass, the piano, everything all at once. And I came home and I was like, man, that was so cool. I said, all right, I'm going to give myself an assignment. I'm going to write a song where I go, and then I sing the entire first line of the song, and then sing the entire second line of the song. It's like as sparse as possible. But I needed something to write about, so I decided I'd make up a story about this girl's tour, and that's what Athens Smiles is. Now, of course, on the record, I taught the guys that way, and right before we were going to record it, Jesse comes in and he goes, hey, I've got an idea, producers. And he holds up a metronome and he goes over to Joey, and they're whistling. I couldn't hear him because I was in an ISO room. And you can see Joey nod his head. Yeah. Oh yeah, I've got it. So then Jesse goes back into the control room and he counts it off, and I'm like, whoa, time. What are we doing here? And then as soon as he did it, I was like, oh, I see where you're going. Right. And the song's way faster, and then we put Nashville strings on it, and Joey's drum line on that song is just over the top good. So yeah, this is Athens Smiles. This is the original version. It goes a little like this. It was a cool, dark night down in Georgia. The last few rays of daylight gone. Down that long and old dirt driveway, through the oaks whose green leaves were turning orange, through that dirty old torn window screen, whose holes of age with yarn were sewn. She went running out of Athens, only home that she'd ever known. Down that long and lonesome highway, the emptiness rolling out for miles. She was driving for 15 hours with nothing changing but the time. And she saw wild running horses and rolling hills stretching out for miles. She went running out of Athens, and I'm guessing that Athens smiled. Now the road can be long and the nights can last forever. Then tomorrow comes, so forever it ain't that long. And there ain't no end in sight, but she goes up that road tonight. Moss, it don't grow tight on a rolling stone. Before that new moon comes, she'll be coming home. Coming on home. Now the West Coast has got its mountains, its tall dark trees and its rainy nights. And the bright lights of those big cities, enough to make any southern girl feel shy. The days can't last forever, but at night she just can't find her time. And she'll be dreaming about Athens, beneath the California night. And the road can be long and the nights can last forever. And then tomorrow comes, so forever it ain't that long. And there ain't no end in sight, but she goes up that road tonight. Moss, it don't grow tight on a rolling stone. Before that new moon comes, she'll be coming on home, getting on home. Now the road east from California, well, it's hot and long and it's without end. By the time that she reached Odessa, well, I bet she was glad to leave the tent. Down through Dallas and Texarkana, down through Memphis, Chattanooga, then she goes rolling right back into Athens. Watching Athens smile again. Again, she rolls right back into Athens. Watching Athens smile again. Again, she rolls right back into Athens. Watching Athens smile again.
Ian Jones is my guest today in a JPR Live Session. That was Athens Smiles, a song from his upcoming album, Results Not Typical. Get more information as well as merch and music at ianjonesmusic.com. So in addition to the full band album, you're releasing all these songs basically like you're sitting in front of us now, playing solo acoustic. What was the decision-making behind that?
Well, we were, little did we know, we were in Nashville for the AMA conference, and we ran into the, we were able to make it into the Yellowstone showcase. And it was great because they had Hayes Carl, who I got to meet and talk with, which is a super nice guy, super tall. He's taller. It's like John Mayer. You know, you don't think these guys are tall until you stand next to him. And I'm 6'3", and I look at him, I'm looking up, I'm like, wow, that's rare. So Hayes is a big guy. William Prince was there, and then there was a gal there as well. And so my manager, Kyle, was talking to the gal. And, of course, everyone was talking to her. So she was like, go away, I don't want to talk to you. And then he saw her again at another panel, and they talked some more. And then one more time, and she was like, okay, look, if this guy's as good as you say he is, send me some stuff. But don't send me produced, finished product. We want to hear raw, live demos.
Right, so Nashville's kind of about the songwriting, I think.
Well, yeah, and nowadays, anyone can go into a studio and push a couple buttons and clean stuff up pretty good, And it doesn't necessarily, the pitch correction now, it doesn't make you sound like Cher. I mean, you can do it note by note, syllable by syllable. It takes a while, and if you know what you're doing,
right.
I've seen it done where you can't tell. But they don't want that. They go, so we said, okay, well, let's go in. I have a friend of mine, Stu Hallerman, who's got a wonderful studio called The Vast in Seattle. And I made my first record in like 93 with him. And I called him up and I said, hey, man, you have any open dates? Give me a deal. So I got in for 2 days, and we recorded like 37 songs, acoustic, guitar, and vocals, and piano and vocals. And we videotaped it as well, just because why wouldn't we? And then afterwards, it turns out that so what we're going to do is we're going to use not only use the stuff for submissions for Yellowstone and the other shows, because she works for, I can't remember the guy's name who does that, who's the head, and it's not Kevin Costner, it's the other guy who's in charge of all those, like 14 shows. one show would be overwhelming to me. I can't imagine how he must not sleep. He must be an alien, but he does 14 shows, and she curates the music.
Yeah.
Or she finds it. He has the final say. So I said, hey, let's send her this stuff. We'll do the videos as well. So if she wants to make sure that it's, that's how it actually was done. But then we thought, hey, what we can do is then we can do acoustic versions for Spotify. Because I know people really like to hear, everyone likes to hear the record version of it, and that's great. But, going out and seeing live music is one of the things people like to see. Most people that I talk to is they don't want to see a band recreate the album on stage. Mm-hmm. They want to see what they're going to do differently. Right. Like Bob Dylan, he never plays the same thing twice. Right. So we're going to do these acoustic things. So we're going to have a Spotify channel that's going to be like acoustic versions as they come out. And then we're going to have the video, and we're going to have it on YouTube as well. Mm-hmm. So we're going to kind of kill 3 birds with one stone. Uh-huh. Poor birds.
Something, yeah. Oh, cool. So you went to college for a while. You were studying physics. Were you going to do something with that? Did you have something in mind with that? Or
my whole family are teachers. My mom was a teacher. My dad was a teacher. Everyone's a teacher. And so after high school, I went to college for like 5 seconds, and I was like, this is for the birds. So I dropped out, and I was racing snowboards for a while. Yeah. And I thought to myself, there's no future in snowboarding. I was riding with, Damian Sanders and Terry Kidwell. The next thing you know, they're all doing pretty well. Right. So I dropped out, and I was a basketball player. And I played all the time. That's how I passed my time. I got to go to the gym where my dad worked. And so I was like, I think I'm going to go back to school. I think I'm ready. I didn't want to go to college until I was ready. So I think it was like 2 years after I graduated from high school. And then one of my friends said, well, hey, man, if you're going to go back to school, you got to play ball. And then one of my other friends was like, because I played center in high school because I could jump and I had orangutan arms. Yeah. And the guy said, one of my other friends said, hey, you'd have to play guard in college. You can't play guard. So, of course, that's a challenge to me. And the last thing you should do is give me a challenge and say, you can't do that, because then I'm going to use every amount of my energy to be like, oh, yeah, watch. So I ended up playing 2 years of college basketball. Mm-hmm. And while I was at the school, since I had some time off, I wasn't the best student in high school. I didn't really apply myself. And I'm sure there's people out there that are going to be like, yeah, that was me. But when I decided it was time to go back, I applied myself, and I took it seriously because I was paying for it. Right. I started out with it's funny, I started out with a math class, and the advisor was an idiot. And then I was taking like math 101, but then she put me in this physics lab class. And at one point, the teacher's like the physics teacher, Les Yerrick, who I'm still friends with. He was, you have good teachers in your life and you stay friends with them forever. Les is one of those guys. So he goes, okay, it's time for everyone to do the derivation of equations. And now this is, again, I'm going to date myself. There was like one guy in the class that had a computer. It was a long time ago. So we had to handwrite everything. And so I raised my hand and I was like, derivation of what? And he said, yeah, derivation of equations. And it's like all this like multivariate calculus stuff. And I was like, I'm looking at the stuff and my eyes are all big and glassed over. And he's like, what math you in? I'm like, I'm in math like 102. And he's like, the hell are you doing in here? I said, well, the advisor. And he's like, shook his head. He goes, people are idiots. He goes, I'll tell you what. You can stay in the class and take it pass fail, copy the derivation of equations. And he thought for sure I was going to bail that day. But I stayed in the class and I got a pass. Well, then I went through all the math stuff because I love math. It's apparently they say left brain, right brain. Musicians tend to be pretty good at math. Mm-hmm. So I went through and I was loving math, and I had some great teachers. A guy named Jim Erickson. He was a great teacher, and he made it fun. And I learned it, and I'd kind of gone back. Instead of jumping in where I should have, I went back and I reviewed. And so by the time I was back in, and I was kicking butt. And now I'm going through these physics classes, and now I'm supposed to be in this lab again. Right. So I show up, and he's like, you again? and we ended up becoming dear friends. Yeah. And so then I went on to University of Washington. I played basketball, and I finally stopped playing basketball because I wasn't going to go play D1 ball. Right. So I was more into academics, and I was a physics math major at University of Washington. But I got really sick, and I ended up dropping out after a Christmas break. And one of my roommates, who was a Berkeley graduate, he was a bass player from Berkeley, and he said, and I had kind of showed him that I was starting to dabble in songwriting, and I would play stuff, and he was like, "You wrote that?" And I didn't know, it was just a pop song or whatever. And he was like, "You're pretty good at writing songs, you know." And he was kind of also angry because he wasn't really good at it. And he said, "Hey, you know what? You can always go back to school unless you're dead." And I woke up like literally, I was like throwing up blood. I was a mess. I was sick. Wow. I was stressed out to the max. He goes, "Hey man, you can always go back to school unless you're dead. And at this rate, you're killing yourself. So, and you seem to be pretty good at this music stuff. So I tell you what, why don't you your parents obviously don't care. So, and that was part of the stress thing. He's like, why don't you just do some music stuff for a while, get a job, hang out, enjoy life. Go back to school when you want to." And so I did. And I started playing music more seriously. I started taking it more seriously. And they told me, too, at the same time, they said, "But whatever you do, don't waste people's time."
Right. So that's that back to the work ethic.
It's a valid lesson because, I know a lot of people that all they do is waste people's time, and it's a drag. They don't go very far. So I started doing that, and then that was in the early 90s, and then I was in bands in Seattle, and then the rest is history, So.
Very good. Well, how about playing another song? You got something from the new album you want to share with us?
Well, let's see here. I could do Have Mercy. Yeah, so this is a little waltz, and this goes back to, I talk about songwriting all the time, and everyone writes songs differently. The new Rick Rubin book I'm reading, I started reading it last night. It's fascinating.
Intend to, yes.
It's fascinating. I thought it was going to be a biography. It's more of a philosophy book. And he nailed it where...
Speaking of basketball, he's kind of the Phil Jackson of music.
Right, he is. He's like the Yoda. He's like the Jedi. He's one of the Jedi masters.
Very much.
Anyway, how to tap into the universe so you can be an antenna for songs is a tricky thing. I've been doing it for a long time, and I can't just put myself in the headspace and go do it. You just kind of are at the mercy of the universe. And I don't mean to get all hokey, but it's true. There's no other way to explain it. It's unexplainable. So I had gone into the studio to write a song, and all night long I was in there beating my head against the wall. Again, you can't see this on the radio, but I'm simulating beating my head against the wall. And I was bummed out. I was like, another failure of a night, whatever. And I started to feel kind of bummed. And so I sat down and I just happened to be strumming in 3/4. And the first line, I just thought, all alone at the end of the day. Because that's where I was. It was the end of the day. I'm about to go in and go to bed. I'd probably had a couple of glasses of wine. All alone at the end of the day. And then the song wrote itself in 15 minutes. And I walked in after, and so I didn't end up, I went through it a couple times. I ended up going to bed around midnight. Just shaking my head, going, how did that happen? How do I get back there? And it's like, you don't. You just are there and it happens. So anyway, that is kind of the story behind this. This is called Have Mercy. All alone at the end of the day, well, I was wondering what I did wrong, trying to make you stay. Even got down on my knees, still you went away. A little strength to get by. Well, I asked the good Lord, and with tears in my eyes, have mercy and take a chance on me. Well, it's been so many years, and And all those long, lonesome nights as I cried in my beer, and I asked for forgiveness so many times, and all those times you stayed. Yeah, but now that you're gone, well, I've made my excuses. I know that I was wrong. So have mercy and take a chance on me. Hey, kind woman, when you went away, you took a part of me, and you left my poor heart out dangling on a string. Yeah, but now that you're gone, yeah, well, I've made my excuses. I know that I was wrong. So have mercy and take a chance on me. Hey, kind woman, when you went away, you took a part of me, and you left my poor heart out dangling on a string. All alone at the end of the day, well, I raise my eyes up to the heavens and pray, have mercy and take a chance on me. Have mercy and take a chance on me, on me, on me. Lord, have mercy and take a chance on me.
That is Ian Jones in a JPR Live session. That was Have Mercy. It's a song from his new album, Results Not Typical. Find him and his music and his merch at ianjonesmusic.com. When we were looking into some of your other tracks, some of the acoustic stuff that's on its way out and stuff, I found a really cool Tom Petty cover. What's going on? What do you find so intriguing about Tom Petty? Because I'm a big fan, so I like to talk to other people.
So let me go back. And first, let me just interject here and say, so my website is ianjonesmusic.com. Mm-hmm. But in case you want to save yourself a click, all my social media is at Ian Jones Seattle.
So Ian Jones Seattle.
YouTube, okay. Instagram, Facebook, Spotify, everything is Ian Jones Seattle. So okay,
great.
End of that. When I started writing songs, I was very fortunate that one of my bandmates' best friends was this strange savant guy named Bill. I won't use his last name. And he designed AWACS for Boeing, but he also was one of the biggest music bootleggers west of the Mississippi, and previously was a key grip for Led Zeppelin. We would go over to Bill's house and we'd drink martinis and we would watch music videos. And he had like every Smothers Brothers episode, every musical guest ever alphabetized spectrum. Right. And we would, and every show that had music. So back there, the Smothers Brothers, Sonny and Cher, the Johnny Cash show, we would watch them all, and we would watch all the live performances. And one day he said to me, he said, "I like how you write songs. Is there anything I can do for you?" And I was like, "I don't know what you're talking about." And he goes, "Is there anything I could give to you to help you as a songwriter?" And I was like, I have no idea. I mean, I was 21, 22 years old. I have no idea what you're talking about, man. He goes, who's your favorite band? I said, well, the Beatles. And to this day, still hands down, the Beatles. So what he did is he gave me so you're familiar with the anthology. And the reason the anthology came out, the reason the Beatles put out the anthology is because what they didn't know is that right when the development of the portable DAT recording systems were coming out. Because before it was like you needed to have a reel-to-reel and you need to have a big recording thing. Well, now they've got these things that fit in your pocket.
Right.
Well, this guy was doing research, and he was going into the EMI vaults doing research for a Beatles book. Well, little did they know that he was putting on these reels, and he was just recording everything. So it started to come out, and the Beatles were like, we got to get ahead of this. So they went through, and they put out I think it was a 4 CD set of the anthology.
I have all of them.
Well, what I got was the EMI vaults.
Wow.
And I still have on metal tapes. And it's a shoebox, 2 layers high, so probably 35, 40 tapes, handwritten. And it was like one of the tapes had 16 versions of I Saw Her Standing There on it. And the thing is that, and now that, you saw the Let It Be thing that just came out. And one of the things that was great about that is it shows that the Beatles were human. They're in the studio and they're working on stuff, and their first versions of it was garbage. But they worked, and they worked, and they worked. And Paul McCartney was a slave driver. But George Martin was a genius. And you'd hear them working through take after take, and you'd hear George come through in the middle, George Martin come through and go, okay, now George, now you try this. Hey, John, try this. And so I had all these cassettes. There was one of the, one side was the mono version of Sgt. Pepper, and the other side was just the individual sound effects. And you listen to that, and then you flip it over and you listen. And on an 8-track, on 2 4-tracks, George Martin was able to make that record using those sound effects. And it blew my mind. So I would listen to these tapes over and over and over again. And that's where I learned. I took what George Martin was saying and I applied them to my own songs. I would come up with an idea and I'd be like, okay, so why does that suck? Okay, well, the bridge doesn't have a bridge, so I need a bridge. Where does that go? How about a middle 8? And, that's too long. And so I used all the knowledge of the trillion times I listened to those tapes. And then he gave me a couple Bob Dylan tapes, but I was like, I had all the Bob Dylan records, and I'd listened to those a million times. And then I started to do the same thing with Tom Petty. And one of the things with Tom Petty that made me mad was you sit down to figure out a Tom Petty song, and you're like, all right, I'm going to do this. I'm going to tackle this thing. And and you start tackling it. And you're like, what? It's GCD2? It's like, again? Right. The guy was a master of taking the simplest chord progressions and making them sound completely different than the last time he did it. And it's fascinating to me. And one of the things that I've learned by talking with people, talking with a guy like John Mayer, who said one of the hardest things coming out of Berkeley and doing all these things is writing a song simply. Having all the knowledge in the world, being able to play every jazz chord without even thinking, and writing a song in GCD. Right. It's the hardest thing in the world. Well, Tom Petty figured it out. Right. So I studied him, and I love Tom Petty. And I was, when I found out he died, it's, John Lennon, there's a David Bowie, Tom Petty. I'll never forget exactly where I was when I heard the news, and it broke my heart. So now for the story. So there was a guy named Billy Brichette who was, when I lived in Santa Barbara, Billy had this place up in Toro Canyon where he had made this beautiful amphitheater. The backdrop was the ocean and the Channel Islands. Right. And he would have these parties, and he'd invite all the neighbors so they wouldn't get mad. And he called it Toro Canyon Bowl. And that's where I met, that's where Jesse and I really met, and we would do these things, then we'd stay up all night playing, Crosby Loggins, Kenny's son would be there, and all these people. Mike Campbell started showing up. Mike Campbell's son. Ronnie Blair spent the entire weekend one time. And but Billy was in this band called Holy Ghost, and it was a cover band. And we'd all jump up and jam with them and play at the Toro Bowl. At the end of the night, Holy Ghost would play, and we'd all jump up and we'd play and we'd take solos and it was just a blast, right? Well, this song was one that we used to all do. And then when everyone moved away, because Santa Barbara's weird. You move there for a couple of years, and either you stay forever or you leave. You go back to wherever you came or you go somewhere else. And a bunch of the people had moved on to Colorado. And Billy moved on to Colorado and unfortunately met a gruesome fate. He was murdered. Yeah. And this was, I can't remember how many years ago, but they had a memorial for him back in Santa Barbara. And I didn't get to go. And, but I sat in my studio, and I remember I sat down and I started playing this song, and it didn't feel right. Because I was playing it the way we used to do it, like it is off the record. And I'm like, yeah, but it's not right. So I changed it. And it felt better doing it that way. And then when I ended up going back down to Santa Barbara, I went on tour, and I got together with my buddy Phil Cody, who's a songwriter who lives in L.A., fantastic singer-songwriter. And we got together, and it was a bunch of the same people that were all friends with Billy. And I got up to play, and there was a bunch of people there, and I said, hey, I'm sorry I missed Billy's memorial, but this is my contribution to that, posthumously. And I played the song, and it shut everyone up because it was different. So this is my version of Mary Jane's Last Dance. She grew up in an Indiana town, had a good-looking mama, never was around, but she grew up tall and she grew up right with the Indiana boys on the Indiana night. Well, she moved down here at the age of 18. Blew the boys away, it was more than they'd seen. I was introduced and we both started grooving. I said, I dig you, baby, but I gotta keep moving on. And keep moving on. Last dance with Mary Jane. One more time to kill the pain. I feel summer creeping in, and I'm tired of this town again. Yeah, well, I don't know, but I've been told if you never slow down, then you never grow old. I'm tired of screwing up, I'm tired of going down. Tired of myself, I'm tired of this town. Oh, my, oh, hell yes. Honey, put on that party dress. Buy me a drink, sing me a song. Take me as I come, 'cause I can't stay long. Last dance with Mary Jane. One more time to kill the pain. I feel summer creeping in, and I'm tired of this town again. there's pigeons down in Market Square. She's standing in her underwear. She's looking down from the hotel room, says nightfall's gonna be coming soon. Oh my, oh hell yes, you got to put on that party dress. It was too cold to cry when she woke up alone. Hit the last number and walked to the road. Last dance with Mary Jane. One more time to kill the pain. And I feel summer creeping in, and I'm tired of this town again.
That's Ian Jones' Last Dance, or pardon me, Mary Jane's Last Dance. Ian Jones is my guest in a JPR Live session. Get information about his new release, Results Not Typical. It's dropping April 7th at ianjonesmusic.com, and find his social media stuff at Ian Jones Seattle.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Ian, for being our guest today in a JPR Live session. I wish you the best of luck on your new release.
Thanks. I'm looking forward to getting back out on the road and going and doing this. I mean, this is great. Thank you very much. What a beautiful facility, and what a great, I've never done a lot of time here in Ashland, so this is, I've been driving around checking it out. It's a very cool place, and I look forward to coming back.
Yeah, we'll look forward to seeing you in the future. This JPR Live session was made possible with the support of the Falls Tap House, offering extensive tap selection, outdoor rooftop seating, food trucks on site, and live music. They're open for beerness daily. Find Falls Tap House at Facebook and Instagram. JPR Live sessions are engineered by Jon Griffin. You can find this and our other live sessions at our website, ijpr.org. And JPR Live Sessions podcasts are at Spotify, Stitcher, and Apple Podcasts.